You're good.
All right, good afternoon. This is Bill Kanda, Chairman of the Custer County Board of Health. This is Wednesday, February the 8th, 2023. And it is actually 1 o'clock, not 1:30. So we'll call this meeting to order. Silence your phones, and I've done it already, Kevin.
That's a good thing.
And let's do the pledge. And Dr. Brown, can you kick us off?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, this meeting was posted at 1:30, huh?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't. That's what's on our meeting, our minutes, but it
The
was,
minutes are from the last.
that's right. So
Right, from the
it's
May
not,
24th.
it's not, it
Oh,
was
yeah,
posted
yeah.
correctly. This just was not on the,
I think the one you just marked is the minutes we have for approval from last time.
oh, yeah, it probably is.
I looked at the minutes thinking it was the heading of the agenda.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
And it's still,
we're
the,
good.
it was all this stuff was 1:30. Initially. So,
The agenda is 1 o'clock.
right, the agenda is 1 o'clock.
So we're
And
good.
do you have a hard copy of that?
Yeah,
I've got all my stuff's the old stuff that you gave me.
I can give you.
I got it. I thought I put it over there, so.
But as soon as you hand that to me, do the roll call.
Righty. Commissioner Kanda,
Here.
Commissioner Day,
Board of
Board of Health.
Board of Health member Kevin Day is here.
So's Commissioner Kanda and the Board of Health.
and Mr. Tom Flower, Board of Health,
Present.
and Jennifer Cree, Board of Health Secretary,
And I see that
and
Dorothy is not online yet. Oh,
Dorothy's having a problem.
I know I just sent her the link. So,
You know, put her, we could call her and put her on the phone if we have to.
well, do you want to continue to go through the,
We need to keep the Zoom up.
okay? I will.
Do you
give
want
her-
to talk her through it?
Do you want to, yes. I will call her.
Make sure she gets on.
We could continue.
Yeah, we will.
Right.
All right, so audience introductions, we've got Dr. Brown, Board of Health Director. Nobody else is in the room. Anybody online, guys?
No.
Okay, and the any amendments to the agenda? Anybody?
No, sir.
None here.
I'm good here. And we do not have any minutes to approve.
We do.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I'm missing-
That's the one.
Oh, that's the one we just
1:30
got.
on
That's what it is. Okay. Okay, you've got the minutes?
it. Yes.
All right, let's take a look at them.
Then I would make a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, February 8th, 2023.
I'll second, or you got a second, we got a motion on the floor, been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Don't need any discussion on that, I don't think. Unless you guys have an issue. And in that case, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and as soon as Dorothy comes up, let me know, will you? Okay, given that, we got any reports from anything Utah?
Dorothy is on it.
Dorothy's up now.
Can you hear us, Dorothy? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You can be
Quiet.
you can be autocratic.
Be quiet.
Dorothy, you there? Push the space bar.
She had her microphone. There it is.
Can you hold the space bar down and it'll stay on, or you can,
You are now muted. Now you're not. Now you are.
When you're not, talk.
You're good.
Why is she coming through? You got your audio, let's see, you got her mics on, though. We ought to hear her on this side.
Unless your volume's turned down.
Her volume can be down, but ours is up. You got any suggestions over there? Is, Zoom okay?
Yeah, and you could ask Rich to talk and see if you can hear him.
Rich, you there?
He texted me and said he was.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Thank you.
We're having trouble
Rich.
hearing Dorothy.
All right, yeah, we're trying to figure out our technical difficulties here, sir. Good to
Every
see
time
you.
I use one of these, something goes wrong. So I'm lucky today
Yeah.
that both the mic is working. So
Yeah, your mic's working fine.
Vernon's calling Dorothy to walk her through
Okay,
because it's on her end.
I will then we'll keep looking along here. Okay, so sanitarian report will postpone for a minute. Dr. Brown, you want to kick off here?
Because Sheriff Smith is unlimited time frame and so on, I was going to suggest that we include him in
That's
his
fine.
particular
That's
portion at this point.
So you want to talk about what he's gonna talk about, or you want to introduce
Basically,
him?
yeah, I'll just introduce some of the things that we had discussed, and the things that need to be taken care of. The transportation route organization for high-risk residents for our valley, if we have to evacuate quickly, or if we need to send somebody out to get them because they've hurt themselves or whatever. There are some various programs that allow us to do that, but the people have to volunteer their information. It's not something we're gonna force on them or demand of them. And we don't want to violate privacy rules. So I had suggested to Sheriff Smith that we would have the information kept in his offices and that he would have access to them. It would not be names on a map, but it would be numbers on a map. So we would have things that would call up the number on his list. So that, I don't want all their information out on public media, but that was one of the things. Sheriff Smith,
yes, sir.
is there a comment or suggestion or whatever that you would like to make at this time? Relative
Yes.
to the transportation?
Vern was nice enough to print me several maps of the entire county so that you could actually see the names of all the little county roads. And then Scott Camper at Road and Bridge is working on that to identify like the high priority evacuation routes. So let's say this happened, I don't know, in a snowstorm, that would be considered a priority for snow plowing. And then he's also going to mark on the map roads that should never be used for evacuation because they're too dangerous, or ambulances or something can't drive on it. And I would like to, once that map is completed, make that a public record and put it in both the newspapers. And even if we did have an evacuation event, hang it up at the post office like the Forest Service does. The next phase of that map project is I'm going to work with the posse to identify like roadblock areas. And then the information that Dr. Brown has, which would be health HIPAA private healthcare information. I would like to have access to that and not publicize that in the paper, but then do what we could do to help evacuate them. And Dr. Brown had looked at using a van, and he mentioned, so it has to be accessible for disabled patients, and it has to have a protective shield. Well, I had come to the Board of Commissioners early this year about closing the jail and proposed buying a hybrid minivan as a better gas mileage prison transport vehicle. And you guys had preliminarily approved doing that. And that would include a plastic shield. And we have a vendor in Denver that does the emergency vehicle upfitting, and he can custom make a plastic shield. And so I'd be willing to donate the big transport van and the later coming hybrid van for that project to help evacuate medical patients from these remote areas. And then Dr. Brown also asked about a two-way radio. And so the sheriff's office, with a small budget increase or grant, could purchase a police radio similar to what we have in the sheriff vehicles, fire trucks, and ambulances. And that would be part of our inventory so that the driver of the public health truck would be able to communicate with us live.
Okay, just real quick, Sheriff, when you say donate, does that mean make available?
Yes, sir.
On call at the time of the emergency?
Yes.
It would be a priority for that to happen with that vehicle.
Yes, so I would consider that the highest priority. So I would even delay doing prison transports if that happened that day, and instead have posse members drive these vans, plus Dr. Brown's public health truck to try to do the evacuations of the patients that need help.
Okay, and then today we heard from Robin Knappy that she was going to buy some radios for emergency stuff. Was that considered part of this?
No, she hasn't talked with me about that.
Because she was going to buy some, she mentioned your name.
Okay.
For public health.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what radio she had, who she thought.
And that may be the,
We needed to have one in the pickup so that if we're using things for OEM, that we would be able to communicate back and forth, you know, which place to land and where to.
But that'd be fine. The requirement's valid. It's just a matter of who's paying for what, when, and getting it in time. And so, and Sheriff Smith mentioned that he was willing to purchase it, but he had to have some money to do that. And do you know how much that'd be, Rich?
I'm guessing $5,000 for the portable walkie-talkie and more for the permanently installed one in the pickup. So I'm happy to reach out to Robin.
Why don't you guys kind of coordinate
I
to get
will.
the best deal for the county through whatever grant and whatever budget we got, and let us know how we need to handle that.
Okay.
She had told me that they had about $10,000 that she could specifically donate into this effort.
Perfect.
Robin did.
Yes. probably.
So
Sorry.
so how are you guys coordinated? And then all we need to know is what's the bottom line to the county. If there's gonna be one.
Yeah.
Any comment?
I would just touch, I think, on the paperwork that Dr. Brown gave us in his last paragraph on that. That when his van that is being, the lift is being worked
Oh, yeah.
on, that was donated to public health, that would also be available for these transports. So that lift would have to be fixed and then the barrier put in it, which would still suffice
Yes.
for a dual use van. That's
And for picking up, so Sheriff Smith does not have to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and take his only deputy who's on call and tie him up for 2 hours when they drive somebody with an emotional meltdown down to one of the facilities, because ours could still be then used. And under the Rotary Club kind of organization who has drivers, and I've talked to Dwayne Johnson, who is the head of their organization, about them providing drivers to take somebody in the middle of the night. So we'd still have our sheriff here or deputy. So
Okay.
it'd be 3 uses.
Then the other issue was making sure it gets fixed, which we know
I know,
that
but-
you're working on.
Yes, sir.
I guess, Mike. This might be for you or for Rich, either one. As far as using rotary drivers, my one concern would be to make sure that they are covered liability wise.
I asked Dwayne about that, and he said that he was the person who's CDL.
Seems like they're working, yeah.
That's what he told me, and I don't have anything in writing.
I would just make sure that's a verified.
Oh, absolutely.
So, sir, I did
Okay.
talk to our representative at the county insurance pool, and I have in writing that statutory volunteers such as the posse and search and rescue people are covered under the policy, driving county-owned vehicles, but not personal-owned vehicles.
Okay, but they didn't specifically mention anybody because the Rotary van, they are not statutory volunteers.
No, they're not that's not a county vehicle either.
Well, as the county owns it.
The rotary vans.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the van that they would be driving for us.
And Dr. Brown said they were volunteering their drivers
Oh,
to drive our
I
vehicles.
thought they were.
Okay.
So that may be a problem. I would definitely verify those people would be available. But apparently we have the posse members and things of that nature that wouldn't actually take a deputy off the street.
Yes,
So that'd be good. That's
several,
just make sure their liability is covering them as a driver somewhere.
You started to say something.
oh,
Was that about the door?
yeah, that
Oh,
was, I just couldn't hear the people.
Okay, Dorothy, according to Vernon, she's required updates and a restart. And so she should be on pretty soon. You can see her yet.
She wasn't, now she's gone, so she'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Sheriff Smith, thank you very much.
You bet. And once this map that I finish in collaboration with Road and Bridge, I'll make a copy available to public health and any other person that we can to help collaborate on evacuation.
I will try to do an overlay for you,
Okay,
but we don't have separate maps, but the same map with just more information.
perfect.
Are these like a GIS map or just?
Yeah, yes, sir.
standard map?
It's a standard map that Vern can print out, but then we're asking to add data, and then we'll print one copy, and then I'll have one, the posse will have one, the fire chief will have one, all that kind of stuff.
Sounds good.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Anything else from you there, Rich?
No, sir.
It's a small meeting there.
Okay,
That's great. Why?
okay, let's see, did Sheriff Smith, that seems like we had something else to ask him. Oh,
You put them on the agenda for commissioners. but
yeah,
I haven't had a chance to reach out.
yeah, and that's a different topic, so I guess we're good. All right,
Should just let him know that he's gonna be on an agenda.
you will be on the agenda, Rich.
Okay.
And also, I understand that you're gonna treat both Tom and Kevin to lunch down in Canyon when they tour the jail. That's what they told me.
So they want to eat lunch in the jail or at one of the restaurants?
I want to test that jail food out, see if it's worthy of our prisoners.
We want to do a thorough test for us.
Muggs does a very good lunch.
Thank
But
you,
I
sir.
won't be able to be there, Rich. I'm not back from our son's change of command in Hawaii till the next day.
So you're saying Hawaii is better than a jail trip?
I'd rather eat that food than that jail food.
All right. Well, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and so while we're waiting for Dorothy, is there anything
I'm
else?
on, I think,
Oh, there she is.
via cell phone.
All right, well, hang tight then for a minute.
Okay, no problem.
Before we get Dorothy's
No, we can get
sanitarian
here
report.
and then we'll go through everything.
Okay. Okay, Dorothy, after all that, you're the star of the show.
Well, I apologize for my technical difficulties. Now I don't have everything in front of me, but I'll try to wing it. My computer's still updating. The top part of the document that I sent you guys for the meeting today is really just some updates on some things that we've done from a sanitarian perspective. And I won't go through each and every one of them, but we've definitely made some progress in getting some septic systems installed. Just based on letters being sent out, asking people to give us proof of their septic systems. Those out at the lake that have outhouses, we've actually had 2 that have responded and actually put in a holding tank. I would say overall, we've probably and we've had a couple more come in, we've probably had about 13 septic systems installed based on our efforts from a sanitarian standpoint.
So when you say from a sanitarian standpoint, define that. Dorothy.
Well, just compliance, I guess, standpoint, the work that we've done on Fridays to try to get
Oh.
things under, to address some of the issues that we have out there. We
That's-
are right now, we have started working on San Isabel, trying to get some people to comply. I've had 2 complaints in that area, and both of the complaints voiced their concern about their area, and excited that, you know, we may put some effort into San Isabel like we did out at Lake Dewey. So that's starting. I have 2 active complaints that I'm following up on. We did go up there Friday, and I didn't see current evidence of what the 2 complaints. I did not see evidence that there was actually effluent being expelled out onto the ground. I did speak to both of the neighbors and follow up, the ones who had complained. And I'm just keeping an eye on that. If I don't have evidence, I can't do anything about it, but they were pretty adamant that there were issues there. So we'll be spending some more time, probably Friday, down at San Isabel. Does anybody have any questions about any of the bullet points up at the top on kind of what we've been working on?
Yeah, Dorothy, if I may, you said you had 24 with no septics and 5 have installed systems. Was that a total of 29 problems and 5 of them installed new systems, or?
No, a total of 24. And of those 24, we've had 5 reply and actually install systems.
Those are at Lake Dewey or
No.
countywide?
I would say the majority.
Okay. Good, thank you.
And systems mean the whole 9 yards.
Mostly out at San Isabel, it is a vault system, but at least we're going from nothing to something to help with the situation.
Right.
Um,
And I guess that follow up on that, the rest of those systems then are vaults that are not complying, or they just throwing it on the ground.
the rest of them do not have a system. It's just a little summer cabin, and they've never been required to have a system. And we're just working with them, giving them time to get it installed, and not necessarily taking any action, just working with them and trying to get them to comply. It's been very positive, the feedback from what we're asking them to do. It's surprising, so. Number 7, I am in the process of investigating a report of 4 apartments up on the top level of a barn. And that's gonna be a concern once, I don't know what we're gonna do with those 4 families. I did drive by the place. I have yet to make any official progress in taking care of that. I'm just, kind of wondering, it isn't like I can just go shut that down with 4 families potentially living in those apartments, but it is definitely gonna be an issue.
It's a failed septic system, to be clear, because your notes are pretty cryptic. And I understand what you said. You got you said number 7.
I think it's number 8.
It's actually
Which-
8, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I probably don't have the correct one. I apologize. I had it on my computer system, but I don't have my computer, so.
Number 8 is in regards to 4 apartments on the upper
Okay.
level.
The barn.
No permit on file, and septic is not designed to accommodate that.
And so, that, which means to me, a little more data would be, is it 1,000-gallon tank? There's not a big enough tank that's gonna handle 4 of them. So
It's I believe a 5-bedroom home, and then there's the 4 apartments and the shop/barn that I don't know how they're attached to that septic.
Okay, that's a significant one there.
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay. And you just discovered that?
It was reported to me. It was a face-to-face verbal complaint.
That's not what I meant. It's recently,
Oh.
like within the last
Yes.
week.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on that?
No, I'm taking it number 7's probably on the east side of the county.
What was 7? Because my numbers are off of my paper
That would
here.
be the Feld septic. I believe that's the one down there.
We got a 500-gallon tank, 3-bedroom trailer.
Yes, yes. And it was inspected, and it passed. I'm just the neighbor or the individual who is concerned about their well is quite concerned. So I don't have any evidence that there is a leach field connected to that tank. And I've made a phone call to the individual the contractor who did the inspection, but I have not heard back from him.
So maybe it's a misnomer then. It's not, there was a complaint. We don't know whether a septic system has failed. We don't even know if there's a leach field or not. Yeah.
There was a complaint and I sent a letter to the landowner. They did have an inspection done. That inspection did come back according to the landowner that the system was fine. I know that it is just an old metal 500-gallon tank, but I do not show any evidence that there's a leach field there. If it's a 500-gallon tank and all of their black and gray water are running into that, my concern is that it's going to fill up quick because that is a rental.
So they should be treating that as a vault.
Sounds like it's a vault, but
But
really.
they're probably not. That's the issue.
I'm gonna say it's probably being used as assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, just
and
sitting there. being-
a vault system, according to our regulations, has to be at least a 1,500-gallon tank. And that was one that was discussed about it being grandfathered in, and that's one of my questions. When we get there.
Depends when I was gonna ask that same question, because if it's been being pumped, is there records of it being pumped regularly? Or not? And what made it pass a system inspection? Did it just mean it was pumped out? What does
It
that
was
mean?
pumped. Yeah, it was pumped and he did mark on the paperwork that it had passed inspection. But in my opinion, based on what I looked at in the paperwork, it wasn't necessarily sufficient. So I do have a phone call into that particular individual to try to get more information.
And when you
But it
say,
is a valid, go ahead.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. When you say you reaching out to the individual, is that the landowner or the person who inspected it?
I've spoke to the landowner and they're quite concerned because like I said, it is a rental. She's had issues in the past with her system. And it appears based on what I'm seeing in the file that it has passed inspection in the past. The individual who inspected it did pass it. However, if my concern is if it does not have a leach field, that 500-gallon tank may be empty right now, but if she rents it out to a family of 3 or 4 people, it's going to fill up quick.
Do you
And
know
I
who
don't
inspected?
know.
Sorry.
I don't know if she has record of it being pumped on a consistent basis. I'll have
Do
to
you
check.
know who
into that.
inspected it most recently?
It was, I can't think of the guy's name. He's out of Canyon City.
You
Rick-
you
I think
know
it's
that
Rick.
it was inspected by an inspector.
Well, that's
Did you get
that's
the
a
report?
question.
Did you get the report from the inspector?
I do have the report. I don't have it with me right now, but I do have the report.
I want to know if you got a report.
Okay, Dorothy, just real quick, I'll summarize it. Tom's asking a good question. You've been inspected and you were shown an inspection report and you said you were gonna reach out to that individual, meaning the inspector, is what it sounded like to us, to me.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you're gonna go find that inspector, you're gonna ask what he did to approve it for what, whether it's a vault, yeah, what is the system, what did he inspect? Yeah.
As far as I can tell, yes, and it is a vault system, but I
Okay,
can't, I need to confirm that with him.
All right.
Well, my takeaway here would be whether it's a vault system or not. If it's 500-gallon tank, that doesn't meet the requirements. So if they're gonna have a vault system, they need to put in a 1,500-gallon, correct?
Well, only if, Tom, then here's the issue, and then this has happened before, even when Jackie was here too. If there's a vault system and it's being pumped, like it should be, it doesn't matter what the size was because it was approved and put in. If it had failed, if there was a break in the tank or a line going to it, then you have to replace it with the new system. It has to come up to code. So that's the issue that she's faced with, and that's why that gal's worried, because it's something that is her income, and so she's trying to, and Dorothy's trying to work with her on figuring out what is really true here.
And I certainly agree with Commissioner Candid, Dorothy, that if a system fails that's not compliant, then we need to force them to get compliant with a new system.
Right.
Right. And here's my concern. We have really no certification for an inspector.
Right.
There's no requirement for that whatsoever in our regulations. And so how do we define an inspector?
So that's a good question, and in the past, they've relied upon people that are inspecting it, the tank guys that are doing it. Then we would want to get his checklist, and we could actually use that, but it would involve the integrity of the tank and the integrity of the line coming in and out of it, and whether it is flowing in or out of it, or whether there's any visible signs of a leak. So,
Right.
so that would be the issue, but for now, we gotta make sure that if it's been inspected, that what's the integrity? We can ask that guy, and that's all we can do, or get another independent report if you don't believe that guy.
Right. And I, what my thought is once they get somebody in there renting, then I can kind of monitor and make sure that there's no overflow from that tank. But right now it's empty and there's nobody in there. So I don't have it. There's no evidence of anything. But you're right. We could get another person to go inspect it.
In my opinion on your second part of your question there, I do think if a property is sold, the septic tanks need to be inspected and they need to be compliant before that property changes hands.
That would really help matters.
I think that's pretty simple to get that into the,
Compliant in what way though?
well, they have to be a compliant septic system or vault, one or two.
So is that something we would put in the Custer County on-site waste treatment system and our regulations there, or would that also go into our resolution?
Well, that would have to be something, I think, that would have to go into a resolution, and the citizens would have an input on it, because that's a major change right now. That system, and all of the, as far as I know, when they sell a house, if it's got a vault that is functional and is compliant, it was not compliant with the new code, but was put in under an old code, that has never, there's no requirement for a guy to dig it up and change it and spend 10 grand on a system. That would, and that's why it would have to be in a resolution that we would have to go through the process of getting validated with a hearing and all that.
I definitely think that language would need to be in the resolution.
Sure.
So that's something I can speak to the planning commission and add that to some of our changes.
You see what their recommendations are and how we would handle them.
We'll do that.
And I do think we need to develop a registration system for septic inspectors. What to say, I couldn't all of a sudden become a septic inspector.
So that's a good point.
And I think that's something else that the planning commission could look at.
And right now, the only inspector we got is Dorothy. She's an inspector to see they were installed correctly.
Right.
And a guy that pumps it is certain, he's checked out on a system to do it without causing problems, but I don't think there's a state requirement that says he's got to have a license to be a pumper.
No, there's not. And I've looked into that just recently because I was trying to follow up on a couple things. So
We can have my view, we can have a process that says to be, to inspect our tanks in this county, we need to see a report that includes, what your visual, inspection look like, what's the integrity of the tank. Is there any leak, whatever, and we can come up
Yep.
with a criteria probably. But you'd have to work that with them, find out what they do to tell you it passed inspection. And then we can add or subtract to it.
And I was gonna get into this later on, but since we're already talking about this, I really would like to suggest that maybe we look at Art Nordike as being someone who could potentially assist in putting together some training or some certification, maybe the checklist that needs to be done. If I'm a pumper and I do inspections, this is what we need to do. Art had mentioned to me, Bill, that you had talked to him and he had offered his assistance and it may have been in another area. But
I was for that and for anything else you need to have some expertise that he's got.
Yeah.
And he's doing, and he said he might not even charge for that service.
Well, I have a little bit of money in my contractor budget because I left that there just in case we had other had any issues going forward.
It's a good idea.
Okay.
When you've been
So-
dealing with it that many years, you can't get out with all at one shot.
Yeah, he knows how to inspect, he knows how to drop a pill into it and chase it down the pipe and into the tank and out of the
Yeah.
leach.
I just think it's important that we have people out there that are properly qualified. There is a training through it's Colorado On-Site Waste Systems, Professional On-Site Waste Systems. They call it CPOW. Or there's also, I think it's NWAT is another abbreviation for the name of the organization. But I know that there is inspector training that we could require that they take. But I'll look
Sure.
into that a little bit more. That's going to be an expense that they would have to take on.
I like it,
Yeah,
because we haven't done all that, that's why we're having all the problems we're having.
Yes.
catching up.
Nobody wanted to be the bad guy
That's actually a good guy. Everybody.
in the long term, yeah. Absolutely. Good.
Okay, anything else?
Not on that part of it. I'm trying to pull up, darn it. I bet I lost what I was working on this morning. I attached a copy of the on-site waste management system for Custer County and I'll try to just go through my bullets and cover whatever I have on there. And if I think of anything else since I lost my notes, I will bring it up. I guess I'm concerned that I don't understand what is grandfathered in and what is not. Do we have a list of that anywhere? Or is it just general? If you have a system that's an old system and it still passes, that makes it grandfathered in?
It does in that we don't have any resolution that says anytime you sell a house that you put a new
Okay.
system in. And so
Okay.
therefore you want to treat every one of them. There's no such word as grandfather. Nobody ever said you have a system that's grandfather unless previous, and I don't think Jackie said things like that, but maybe the person behind it did at the time they were talking about getting rid of outhouses. The outhouses, we didn't get rid of those until, what was it, in the 80s sometime.
Yeah,
So
and we still have some out there.
want to do it just like you're doing, in my view, until we come up with a different resolution that we put into effect. Would be to
Okay.
treat them all as they're the systems that need to be certified, that they're still compliant.
Yep.
Whether it's a vault or an old septic system with a perforated pipe out the back end.
Okay. Just to go through some of the certifications that we do have, our installers, we have the installer test, and I know, Bill, you and I had talked about possibly changing some of the questions a little bit so that it's a little bit more relevant to today.
Mhm.
So I'm comfortable with that, with just making some changes. And when I do make some of those changes, I'll definitely bring it to the meeting. The designers and most counties, I had the opportunity to take a couple training classes through the CPOW organization. And most counties require a designer to be part of that process. Where in our county, our installers do both installation and design. There's nothing in our training material or the testing material that talks about how to design a system.
Except there is, in one sense, Dorothy, and that is, if you're putting in trenches, the requirement between trenches is, what is it, 9 feet, or?
I think it's 4.
Well,
I think
it may just be 4. There's several iterations of that, but the point is that, and it can only be so long before you put in another trench, how many infiltrators. So that's the extent of the design, and it's up to the installer to figure out how to snake it around, and whether it's on the side of a hill or in a flat area, and or whether it goes up to a tree and the land up head up where the landowner doesn't want to lose a tree. Well, then you're going to have to pay more money because you're going to have a shorter trench there, and you're going to put 2 more trenches in somewhere else. So
Yeah.
the design hand. So
There's
I don't know what you might, if we're going to look at what designers do, you might want to get a copy from the county and figure out what their added value is to that, and what some guidance might be that we could consider.
Okay, we'll do that. The inspectors, we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Dorothy,
I do, yes.
let Kevin talk here a sec.
Okay,
Sorry
sorry.
about that. I was just gonna make a quick comment on, I think I'm getting into the semantics here again. Because there's a difference between a designer and an engineer.
Right.
So if they're required to have an engineered system, they're required to be licensed and certified. Whereas a designer is basically, he's just designing a standard system. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in the training that I took, I think they do a lot more. One of our biggest problems right now, when someone comes in and they're trying to get information about a septic system, the drawings that we have are not very sufficient. There's no, I can't think of the word no points of that they have done measurements. So like a structure, it doesn't say from the house, this corner of the house, the leach field or the tank is this far from that distance. We could just do things better. And I know I'm pointing out a lot of things, but
That's
something.
That's a very, very good point. There are septic system installers that do good jobs there.
There are.
To the house, they'll measure every turn, every distance from every turn, and reference it to north. And house, but there are others that just put a hand sketch out that says it's 10 feet, and it doesn't give you any guidance.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed or discovered, that when they come in and they pull their permit, we've changed that to be, it has to be a contractor. I have a few instances where an individual has put their name down along with a contractor, and we've discovered that the contractor has no idea that they're actually listed on that permit. So we've made a change in the office where it has to be the actual contractor that comes in and pulls the permit. Another thing that I want to do is to put together some bullet points for the contractors, have an open house, get them to start doing their permits correctly. And by that, I mean, when I go out there, by our regulations, they should have their paperwork ready and the design drawn out for me, so that I just go through and measure. They have always, that I know of, most of them just left it up to planning and zoning to do that schematic of the actual system. So I'm going to start holding them accountable to what is in our regulations. And then before I do that, I'm going to invite them all to an open house and kind of go through some of those things, because it will be a change for some of them. Some of them already do it and they follow it and they do a great job, but we need to make sure they're all doing it correctly.
No argument here.
So for the pumpers, I did see that there's regulations in there and my bad, I did not, I know I read through that when I took my initial test. But I did not, I guess I didn't retain it. And then looking through some things, it does say in there that the planning and zoning office must go out and the way I read it is visually verify that they have knowledge in how to pump. From there, they will be certified. There's where I would also like to utilize Art. I think that he could help me put together somewhat of a checklist for that observation, so I know exactly what I should be looking for. I haven't taken any pumper training and I don't know that there's any out there. So I think it's a good thing for us to look at, and then we could add that in.
Well, it might mean two things. One would be verify that that pumper's got a certificate that says he's qualified to operate a pumper. I guess that's sort of what you just said, that there is training they take. Maybe that's all you're asking for, or that you want to visually see him do it. You'd have to know his system. That may be more complicated.
Yeah, I couldn't find any training for them to take. So what I was hoping that maybe Art and I could sit down and put together some training for both the pumpers and the inspectors, and maybe it's just a checklist that they have to fill out and turn in. And another requirement that I'd like to add to the on-site waste management for us, our regulations, is that they have to come in and ask for the information on the septic tank. I do not have any pumpers, for the most part, that come in and actually ask for the schematic or the number of bedrooms, the size of the tank, where it's located at. That's valuable information for them. And we have a lot of people that are out there doing this, and how do I know they're not driving over the systems? They
need to see that. That's a good point. They need to know where it's located and
Yep.
what they're. I don't think the number of bedrooms matters to them. That's they're all they care about is how big the tank is, and they're going to pump it dry.
Yeah, I think it says in there, and I don't have it in front of me, but that they should validate that. And then maybe I'm reading that from somewhere else, but that's just one example of things that I think we could do to make sure that our residents are getting what they're paying for.
Good idea.
Any question on that part?
Well, Dorothy, you said you didn't remember seeing some language in there. What do you mean in there? In our zoning resolution or in the?
No, in the outs regulations and the Custer County on-site waste management treatment regulations.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I had more highlighted and stuff to go through, but I think I'm catching most of it. And
Your next point on this is the San Isabel, but I think you kind of addressed that already.
I did, yes. And then I just want to make sure that as a group of individuals that we all kind of try to send the same message. And I talked a little bit with Bill and Dr. Brown about that. And I think that's just something we're going to need to work through situation by situation. But if we allow some people to get away with, I don't want to say get away with, have things that are not within regulation and force others to, or work with others to up to compliance. I think we need to be consistent across.
Well, it's consistent in how you apply whatever you're doing, because in some cases they'll be compliant. See, not everybody's got the same system, and people don't understand that. So when you say one
Absolutely.
system, we need to know that it's based on what the rules and facts are, and if apply it to that system. It could be different for his neighbor because it's a different system or a different time it was put in, et cetera. So you just got to be consistent in how you deal with them.
Absolutely. Very good point. And that's really all I have.
Any more for
Good
me?
job. Thank you.
Anything for Cliff?
That's right.
Hey, thanks, Dorothy. I'll call you later.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
One, I'll probably catch you next week. I was gonna just check on one that, see how everything's playing out on, so, but not an issue for today.
All righty, thank you.
Right.
Okay, Dr. Brown, back to you.
Yes, sir. But we can go down, I think, probably just a couple of things. We've already mentioned the joint sheriff's departments and the PHA and Rotary Club and so on, all these things for the vans. So you can just kind of have that piece of paper there sitting for you, just to refresh your memory if somebody asks you questions. I wanted also just to mention another handout that I gave you. Who are the partners important to your whole community response and meeting your community's aspects and functional needs? And this basically was a group in person, face to face, meeting in Pueblo a week ago on Tuesday. That we just went through and said, okay, who has actual effect on public health? And there's a list of about 37 or so different entities here within almost any community, all of which have effects on public health. So the reason for that little listing there for you is when topics come up, discussions, questions are raised, these people all do affect changes. They can contribute or they can detract from the promotion and the approach to public health. We're not dealing with a vaccine program. We're dealing with the various aspects of just living and trying to support each other and the community besides ourselves in health approaches. We're never going to be firemen and the heroes. It should always be preventive, not after action reports that we try to make something happen. So anyway, this is just for information, just to kind of give you a little something to consider who we have to have involved when we are going through any kind of emergency or consideration in the community. Any questions about those things that are just to mention?
What was the point of the meeting? Just to bring everybody together to see how they're gonna help each other? or what?
Yeah, actually, it was how the various aspects of the community contribute to a solution
Just, okay,
to usually emergency.
to open your mind up during an emergency. that-
Right,
Did you, okay,
that this guy
There's
has
other
something to
things.
contribute and this guy,
could have.
exactly. So everything from food pantries to, road and bridge and so on. Okay. Second, or the next thing that I have handed out to you, it's Custer County Emergency Planning and Response, EPR. That's under public health also. And what this lists for you in emergency responses are the various primary authors, the agencies involved and so on, that we would need to have contact. So if you guys need to have, like if something explodes and goes crazy, and you need to say, okay, what in the world do I do here and now? You now have phone numbers under each of these.
What's that handout look like?
Really tiny print. There are about 3 pages in it or so.
That's is it in the?
I didn't have, did you send me that?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
If you don't have that,
Well, don't tear it.
I have a couple of copies here, and I will get that sent out to you individually also. Looks like I have 2 complete copies.
Dr. Brown,
that
you're not
the
aware,
EOP?
I have a conflict.
He's got
I'm
to
gonna
go.
have to go to a meeting. No, that's fine.
I didn't know.
So see, that way you
We
don't.
were
have
trying to
have
get
a
done
third
by
copy.
2,
Right.
but that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk.
See you later, sir.
Okay, Tom. Yeah. And I'll go through really quickly, the COVID I handed out to each of you, I believe these little graphs.
We do have.
Yeah, we've got
Okay, so just to glance at the graph, you see that there have been no deaths since essentially November. And we're not having people getting sick.
Custer County that's due to COVID.
Custer County, yes, exactly. So my epidemiological consults every other week are pretty boring, and they're superficial talk.
Are they still trying to keep track of it? Somebody is.
Yeah, I finally, on my own request, been removed from the COVID weekly report in the state because there's just nothing of substance happening. So anyway, I looked at one of those again this morning. So now this, well, at least they remember that I asked not to be considered. Okay. Next couple things just that I can mention. I have the Custer County Public Health Improvement Plan 2023 that we are required to do every 5 years. But this needs to be passed by all three of you and approved one way or
Is
the
that
other.
updated?
Yeah, this is 2023.
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
thought you said it was going to be, but.
No, no, it's here. I don't even remember how many pages it is, but it falls. Not anti-gravity. Anyway, I can send this all to you on computer. If you want to have a hard copy, I'll send it to you that way. Okay.
Well, and if they would have it approved on the next Board of Health meeting, which we can set,
Okay.
we'll put that as an agenda item since it was not on the agenda.
Right, and let's not set that meeting until you know if somebody's coming or not.
Right. Well, as soon as I set the meeting, then I can get them,
Okay,
I can actually obligate them, particularly for lead voicing. But I also have obligations for asbestos.
I think I did tell you, I would prefer to have mine digital.
yeah, same
And
here.
and
That's
so
a-
I will send all three of you
It's
additional.
a lot of pages to have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Not to be outdone, the emergency operations plan for 2023 for public health also. And this is the first time it's been redone for a long time. We're about 75% complete, but if there are things that you want to glance through at any time, I can send this one also to you digitally. So you can kind of, when you want to go to sleep early that night, you can start reading. And
You know, I'm patenting that for an insomnia.
yes,
cure.
yeah, we'll sell that. We'll have so much money in our county, we will, yeah. But it is coming along, and this little, the Custer County Emergency Planning Response, these section assignments, that's just one little tiny piece of this document.
Okay.
Okay. And this has not occurred for a long time either, so. Next item. Want to touch on air quality. We still have our purple air sensor systems. But I have Deb Deininger working with the N5, and I have told her that I want to have the air quality monitor for particulate matter, but also that I want to have other things involved. One of the big ones being radiation. So she used to take this to her engineering people who design their systems. And then I want the locations and contact of all the high residents we've already talked about. And then to have this information stored with a transportation route so that if something does, if the bells start to go off, that we have radiation coming in, that we have air quality, maybe something like our smoke detection coming in, that we can coordinate all of these exit plans and rescue plans and EMS trips and so on. So we don't have everybody coming into the same intersection trying to get out of the valley with their cattle and truck.
Okay.
So that's what it is right now. I don't have anything new to give you because I haven't received anything except that Boyd, David and I went through and checked everything out with Vernon. We got everything reestablished, so we know that the unit is working again. For 2 months, it was not. That's why Brian died.
Yeah. All right.
Question.
So have you decided to buy a new one or no?
I have not yet, because I haven't seen a new one that is worth our money at this point.
Good.
And I will bring that to you as a group, and hear from you and let you kind of make the decision.
All right.
Try to provide enough information to be able to do so. Okay, so we have training courses. I'll go through item number 2 here on VOH report. Training courses have been scheduled and taken in the following areas of different public health personnel: emergency preparedness, FEMA introduction review, suicidal ideations, mental and behavioral health approaches to depression, all ages. Third one is brain modifications under physical or substance trauma, either one. Just to give you an idea, if the mother abuses drugs or alcohol or essentially anything, we can tell by the person's behavior which trimester
Well,
it was in, because it essentially stops them dead in the water, that the baby's brain in its development. And then the brain has to make changes at that point. So we have people who are highly predisposed toward becoming habituated in drugs or alcohol or whatever. The mother was there because of those 14. It may not have had anything to do with it, because that first genetic portion of life is so defining as to how that person then develops. And say, well, why did this guy develop into an alcoholic and he doesn't seem to be able to break it? It may not have had anything to do with him, but it could have been his mom or his dad.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay. Let's see. We have had all sorts of information or in courses taken relative to maternal and family health issues. I just received a note from the state today from the maternal child health organization congratulating us for the first time in 15 or 20 years of being a part of their system and trying to make things better for kids and moms and dads. And the vaccinations, we go through constant ongoing training, because each of the various vaccines has their own little set of procedures and storage and so on. And so all of our nurses are going through those things now. So we have 3 different nurses. We have Sarah, the ex-school nurse, now on board. She's going through full-time training and doing very well.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she is totally blows me away.
Love her.
how many full-time and part-time guys you got now?
We have 8 total people. Okay, but that's full-time and part-time. We have
3 full-time?
1, 2, 3, 4, including me, but 3 full-time people. And then the rest of them are full, part-time, either nurses or,
4 and 4, basically.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Then we have, I went through the big directors meeting, executive directors meeting up in Denver here 2 weeks ago. So there.
Did that guy get a hold of you, Doug, whatever his name was?
No, he hasn't yet. I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
But no, he
It's not
hasn't.
Doug.
Yeah, it's Douglas. But it has, throughout the state, there's been at least a 50% or more personnel change in the.
You remember the guy that was giving us that suicide stuff up there at CCI? And he had a bunch of stuff. And I brought up the suicides here and stuff that. And he was gonna get, he and Flip actually have sat together in meetings, so that he knew it.
Okay.
And the program that I mentioned to you before about the opioid and getting counselors, we actually have 3 and we're working on a 4th that I introduced to our committee chairman or chairperson. And so we we should have a couple of organizations, not only Sol Vista, but another counseling organization to support our people. Fire event planning for livestock, went through that with Christy Coleman down in Pueblo also. And the health fair 365 that we did complete with 173 people with lab draws and a total of 201 people actually come through and register. So it wasn't as big as what I hoped, but it's as big as what I expected after nobody could go anyplace or do anything.
That's good.
Personnel replacements and training in our public health agency made necessary. We had to change the chief of nursing or administrative assistant, finance and grant officer that we now have in training. An EPR officer who is now in training, and we have several other, part-time plus nurses. Epidemiological and vital statistics, we've not had a death in our ascribed to our county for, well, since before November. To me, it is a non-entity at this point, and that's from any of these things. RSV, norovirus, where you're really sick at your stomach, influenza and the COVID, the SARS-CoV-2. Vaccines continue. We are doing all the vaccinations. I just turned down a program that the state government, kind of interestingly, wants to be able to employ all these people they hired for COVID, want to be shifting them, and we have our people, and we don't have to do that. So we don't have to be ingratiated to the state anymore. We are doing Saturday, where the kids fair family fun day. We have one or two of our nurses, both Sarah and Deb Carl, will be there doing training for car seats, for fitting the car seats and giving one away, and teaching people how to do those things. And we do have certified trained people there now, so those things can be done. We've had let's see, EPR, everything is pretty well covered there. I wanted to cover just briefly anything else. Are there any questions that you guys have that have been posed to you by the community, by individuals, by organizations? Any questions that you have relative to public health?
Nope, and I've not gotten anybody complaining about a bus coming up here to vaccinate us.
Right. Yes, sir. That's that has been taken care of. So we have a gentleman with us today, William Good, who is highly qualified and been all over the world relative to radiation and to some of the things that are going on for space and for potential for people attacking us. And I just wanted to mention him because he is, we are going through everything we can to try to set up programs to be able to define attacks and to protect our people, to let them know. Okay, so if you have any questions from him, he was with the Air Force like me a long time ago.
I believe I'm outnumbered severely here now, then, right?
We got 3 airports.
Three of them.
Using the bright colors, the blue.
It does have its blue on.
Yeah.
So Bill, what are you doing?
What am I doing in general?
No, yeah, for the radiation.
What started this is that I have a patent for detecting weapons of mass destruction on vehicles. Hasn't really gone anywhere, partly because our Congress, only months after 9/11, indemnified American and United against litigation. And that evolved into indemnifying the entire industry, including the manufacturers like Boeing, from terrorist events, which then kind of takes them out of the mix as far as solving the problem. So I've been working since 9/11. I set up a nonprofit registered in Colorado called No Nuclear 9/11's Foundation. So although I originally ideally since I had worked for Atlas Air and did my doctoral thesis as a case study of FedEx and Atlas. I worked at FedEx, UPS and Amazon just to put my patent in the HR file. So if something happened, I could say, well, you know, I told you so.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of proactive
Anybody looking at it now.
corporate activity. They're more concerned with ESG than they are with nuclear terrorism. You know, and I blame BlackRock for that. That's another thing. So in any case, I'm looking at any way, shape, or form to get some traction, to get some actual systems out in vehicles, whether it's a 747 like I used to fly, or pickup truck, whatever, just that's available. Then the question that I'm focused on at the moment, more than anything else, is if you had such a vehicle, it part of the patent is communicating to an outside command center. Well, it's been very hard so far just to even get the information as to who should receive the threat alert, which has to be done. Not obviously, we've been through all sorts of scenarios where somebody's watching the aircraft being loaded and then they see it come to a stop, you know, so they say, aha, they're on to us, and they just blow it up, you know, whatever. Even the ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization regulations are designed for somebody calling in a bomb threat. And some
Not
of
trying to
the,
detect something that.
yeah, some of the regulations aren't really appropriate for this other scenario because it hasn't happened yet. So, so I work on that. I lose sleep on occasion. But I been back and forth to Washington. I spend a lot of time
Yeah.
doing it, but I started talking to Cliff. I'm very encouraged because even in the last week, there's news in some channels about a spy conference between China and Russia and their collaboration, and somehow
Yeah,
things are
that's
leaking
right.
out. And one of the things that leaked out was that part of the battle plan would be hiding nuclear weapons in the US. Well, you're not gonna hide them in Manhattan or downtown Chicago, you're gonna. hide them
Maybe in
remotely.
Westcliff. So.
Yeah, well, they're not gonna, my point is, I got interested in Westcliff because I wanted